The smell of smoke was the first thing I noticed. Not the soft curl of a candle, not the warmth of a fireplace. No, this was sharp, chemical, metallic. The kind of smell that clings to betrayal. I followed it into the kitchen. Bare feet against the cold tiles, heart thumping like it already knew. There, buried under last night's coffee grounds, was something blackened and twisted. My credit card melted into an unrecognizable shard. For a long second, I just stood there, watching it, breathing in the proof that someone wanted me broken before my day even began. Today of all days, my 32nd birthday. The silence of my apartment pressed in on me, until the sound of my own breath felt too loud. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands, opened my banking app, and my chest collapsed. $25,000. Gone. Not transferred. Not pending. Not explainable. Just erased. 3 years of skipped vacations. 3 years of eating noodles at my desk while colleagues ordered steaks. 3 years of saving for the one thing I wanted most. A house of my own, a place untouched by anyone else's control. Gone. I sat down hard in the nearest chair, the phone slipping from my hand onto the table with a hollow knock. My reflection in the dark screen stared back wide-eyed, furious, and, for the first time in a long time, dangerous. Because I knew who had done this. The week had been full of little tests, little smiles too sharp to be kind. My stepmother, Linda, asking strangely specific questions about my savings. My half-sister, Melissa, hovering behind me when I checked my emails, pretending to be curious about financial planning. The way they shared looks when my birthday party was mentioned, 12 years of. Like they were already savoring the punchline of a cruel joke. But it wasn't just the theft. It was the timing. They wanted me to find out this morning. Wanted me to show up tonight, to the ballroom Linda insisted on renting. Hollowed out and humiliated in front of everyone. My father's business partners. Our family. The entire circle that defined my reputation. The phone buzzed again. A text from Melissa. I didn't even want to look. But curiosity dragged my eyes across the screen. A selfie. Melissa in Paris. Eiffel Tower sparkling behind her. Sunglasses that I hadn't bought, but my money had. A champagne flute raised like a toast. Caption, morning, sis. Paris is gorgeous. Thanks for the trip. Some of us actually know how to live. Don't worry. I'll bring you back a keychain. That's more your speed, right? The rage that had been simmering flared white, hot. For 10 years, they had called me the quiet one, the weak one, the doormat who smiled through insults and carried burdens no one thanked me for. They thought patience meant I had no teeth. I didn't throw the phone. I wanted to. My hand twitched with the urge to see it shatter against the wall, but discipline froze me in place. Rage without control is exactly what Linda expected. Exactly what Melissa was betting on. Instead, I opened my laptop. Fingers shaking, I typed faster than I could think. Screenshots of account withdrawals, ATM limits pushed to the max, transfers to names I didn't recognize. Evidence. Cold, digital footprints of betrayal. The security camera logs were worse. The footage from last night had been deleted. Not cut. Not corrupted. Deliberately erased. The app showed a perfect gap. Like someone had pressed backspace on my life between midnight and sunrise. Only 3 people had the access code: me, my father, and Linda. My stomach churned as memories spilled in, uninvited. 10 years of being the shadow at my own table. The quiet, yes. When Melissa demanded more. The silent check I signed when Linda invented another fundraiser that mysteriously vanished. The way birthdays always passed unnoticed for me, but Melissa's were staged like royal coronations. I had swallowed it all, because kindness is easier than conflict, and silence is easier than screaming. But silence has weight. Tonight, it would tip the balance. My phone lit again, a call this time. Linda. I let it buzz, her name burning across the screen. I already knew what she'd say. Sugar, coated cruelty. Polished with the charm she wore like armor. She'd remind me about the Grand Meridian Hotel. The 8 o'clock sharp arrival. She'd tell me to dress. Appropriately. As if I were the embarrassment. And she'd twist the knife because that was her art. The call died, and a voicemail notification blinked. I didn't play it. I didn't need to. Another text followed, Melissa again. A photo this time. Shopping bags lined against a Parisian hotel bed. Hermes, Dayer, Louis Vuitton. Her caption, "Don't be such a baby. Bren." Some of us know how to spend money instead of hoarding it like a scared little mouse. My pulse quickened. Not just with anger, but with resolve. They thought I was too passive to fight back. They thought I'd show up small, crushed under their games. But they didn't know I wasn't alone. I scrolled to a single name and pressed send. James Chen, family lawyer. The only ally I had trusted enough to confide in months ago. When the whispers of fraud first tangled with our company's books. The message was short. It's happening tonight. His reply was instant. Understood. Everything's ready. The clock on my wall ticked steady and cruel. 5 hours until the party. 5 hours until the trap they set for me became their stage. I sat back, inhaled deeply, and closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't feel weak. I felt dangerous. They wanted me broken. 12 years of. They had no idea I had been sharpening myself in silence, waiting for this moment. The Grand Meridian rose like a cathedral of glass and gold. 12 years of. Its entrance lit with chandeliers that spilled light across the marble steps. From the outside, it looked like triumph. Inside, it was meant to be my execution. At 7:45, I stood just beyond the revolving doors, my reflection caught in the glass. For a moment, I barely recognized myself. The dress was simple. Black silk that moved like water. But it carried a weight I hadn't worn before. Not armor, not disguise, resolve. I reached into my clutch. My fingers brushed the envelope my father had sent through the matte trade deed. Just 3 words, in his unmistakable handwriting, trust the process. For 10 years, he had been silent, watching, letting Linda and Melissa slice me open with words, with looks, with quiet thefts they called lessons. He never defended me, not once. And yet tonight, he had chosen this moment to send a signal. A question gnawed at me as I pushed through the doors. Was he my ally, or just another spectator? The ballroom glittered with crystal light and murmurs of polished voices. Over 100 guests, investors, board members, family friends, turned to look as I entered. Their gazes carried curiosity, pity, sometimes thinly veiled contempt. I felt every stare like a blade. Melissa was the first to intercept me. She wore a champagne dress, dripping with jewelry I could practically itemize from my stolen funds. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Happy birthday, sis," she whispered against my cheek, her perfume cloying. "Target, right? The dress. Very you." The room chuckled softly at her barb, though no one dared openly laugh. My throat tightened, but I didn't flinch. Linda arrived seconds later, her gown a cascade of silver sequins. She placed a hand on my arm, feigned warmth glinting in her eyes. "Oh, Brenda, darling," she cooed. "We were just telling everyone how well you're doing in your little accounting role. Such progress." "Chief accountant," I corrected, quietly but firmly. Her smile faltered for half a heartbeat. Then she turned, raising her voice for the crowd. "Of course, Melissa's the real star tonight. Fresh from Paris, studying international business trends." Applause scattered through the room. My chest burned, but I stayed still, silent. And then, unexpectedly, my father rose from the head table. The chatter thinned. He rarely commanded attention so publicly, but his presence was undeniable. He held his glass high, but instead of speaking, he looked directly at me. In that stare, something shifted. Not pity, not resignation, pride. The DJ's microphone screeched as Melissa snatched it. "Daddy, let me?" She giggled, stumbling slightly on her heels. She tapped the mic, projecting photos onto the ballroom screen. Her Paris trip, her designer spree, the stolen money flaunted as proof of her strength. Laughter rippled, some uneasy, some cruel. And then, without planning it, my voice cut through. "Enjoy it while it lasts." The microphone was still live. My words echoed across the ballroom, silencing everything. For the first time in years, the quiet daughter had spoken. And no one, not even Linda, knew what would come next. The silence after my words was the kind that pressed against your skin. Every face in the ballroom turned toward me, searching for cracks. Melissa's champagne smile faltered, her knuckles whitening around the microphone. "What's that supposed to mean?" She snapped, her laugh brittle. "Nothing," I replied evenly, my voice carrying more strength than I felt. "Just economics." A ripple went through the crowd. The kind of ripple that starts in whispers but can become a wave if given time. Linda rose smoothly, her sequined gown glittering like armor. "Brenda thinks she understands money," she said, her tone honeyed but edged with steel. "She doesn't. She clings to pennies, afraid to live. Some of us know that strength means seizing opportunity." "Strength," Melissa repeated, echoing her mother like a trained chorus. "Not weakness." Laughter pricked at the edges of the room. A few board members looked away, embarrassed for me. Others leaned in, sensing blood in the water. My humiliation was supposed to be the evening's entertainment. And for one dizzying second, I wanted to run. To slip out the back, vanish before the fire consumed me. The voice in my head whispered, "You can't win this. You never have. You're the quiet one, the weak one." Then I saw him. My father, still seated at the head table, still silent. But his eyes were locked on mine, steady, proud, unshaken. And in that look, I heard the echo of his note. "Trust the process." James Chen shifted beside me, his leather briefcase within reach. A small nod from him, almost imperceptible. Everything we had prepared, every document, every piece of evidence, it was all here. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just my humiliation on the line. It was my career, my reputation, the future of Miller Industries. If I broke now, they would win. Not just tonight, but forever. Melissa, emboldened by the crowd's hesitation, leaned forward. "Tell us, Brenda." She sneered into the microphone. "How does it feel to watch real women shine while you what? Balance spreadsheets. Live in that sad little apartment. Alone." The cruelty was deliberate, surgical, aimed at the parts of me I had always hidden. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "You're confusing cruelty with strength." It wasn't loud, but the microphone carried it across the ballroom. Heads turned. Murmurs grew louder. The tension shifted, ever so slightly, from me to them. Linda's smile wavered. Melissa's cheeks flushed. They hadn't expected me to speak back. The script was cracking. "Sit down, Brenda," Linda commanded, the first hint of panic threading her voice. But before I could answer, my father stood, slow, deliberate, the kind of movement that commands attention without asking. He held out his hand to Melissa. "Give me the microphone." The air in the ballroom tightened like a wire pulled too far. Melissa hesitated, then obeyed. My father's voice, when it came, was calm but carried iron. "You wanted a lesson tonight," he said, eyes sweeping the room. Then let's make it one no one forgets. And just like that, the stage was his and mine. My father held the microphone like a judge preparing to pass sentence. The room leaned forward as if gravity itself had shifted toward him. For years, he began, his voice low but clear. I've listened. I've watched. I've let others believe silence meant weakness. That was my mistake. He turned his head, eyes locking on Linda. She froze, her smile still painted on but brittle as glass. Strength, he said, pausing long enough for the word to sink, is not what you think it is. A James Chen stood, snapping open the briefcase with a metallic click that cut through the tension. He pulled out a leather folder embossed with the Miller Industries crest. The rustle of papers sounded louder than the jazz that had stuttered to a stop. Ladies and gentlemen, James said, his voice professional, unshaken. Tonight, you will serve as witnesses to matters of record. Legal matters. The crowd murmured, restless. Linda forced a laugh, stepping into the light. Oh, Robert, really? This is absurd. Tonight is supposed to be about family, not theatrics. But Melissa, emboldened by her mother's bravado, blurted out the words that sealed them both. Fine. Yes, we took her money. So what? Brenda hoards it like a coward. We were teaching her to actually live. The silence that followed was devastating. 100 guests, 100 witnesses. And James Chen, calmly raising his phone to confirms, on record. My lungs expanded, air finally rushing back in. It wasn't just humiliation anymore, it was confession. Voluntary, public. You stole from your sister. My father said, his voice sharp enough to cut through marble. On her birthday. And you call that strength. Linda's mask cracked. We were protecting the family. Brenda has no backbone. She would let everything crumble. No, he said, his gaze steady on me. She has patience. And patience is the rarest strength of all. James handed him the folder. My father opened it, pulled out the first document, and held it up so everyone could see. 6 months ago, he announced, I signed a power of attorney, transferring full financial authority of Miller Industries to Brenda. The words detonated in the room. Gasps, whispers, a few hands-covered mouths. Linda staggered back. You what? Every company account you touched. Every unauthorized withdrawal. Every fraudulent charge, James said, flipping through the evidence. Documented. By Brenda. Approved by the board. And now, exposed. Melissa's phone slipped from her hand, clattering against the marble floor. You thought she was weak because she didn't fight you in the open. My father continued, his voice a steady hammer. But she was documenting every theft, every manipulation, every lie. She wasn't silent because she was powerless. She was silent because she was building the case that ends tonight. The crowd erupted again, not in laughter now, but in shock, gasps and whispers like a storm. I stood slowly, my chair scraping back. For the first time, my voice didn't shake. You wanted to teach me a lesson, I said, my gaze fixed on Linda and Melissa. Here it is, kindness is not surrender, and patience isn't weakness. It's strategy. The applause started with one person. Harrison Walsh, my father's oldest client. Then another. Then the entire ballroom thundered with it, the sound rolling like a wave. Linda and Melissa stood pale, exposed. 12 years of drowning in the very spotlight they had prepared for me. And in that moment, I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I was the one who had ended the silence. The applause still rang in my ears when the ballroom doors shut behind Linda and Melissa. Their exit wasn't graceful. Melissa's heels caught on the carpet, and Linda's sequined gown dragged behind her like a fallen crown. For once, no one rushed to follow. No one whispered their names with admiration. They left not as queens of the evening, but as exiles. And suddenly, the room felt lighter. People surrounded me, clients, board members, colleagues who had barely acknowledged me before. Congratulatory hands reached for mine, glasses raised in toasts. Contracts hinted at in hurried whispers. They weren't just celebrating my birthday. They were aligning themselves with the future. But beneath the champagne sparkle, my chest ached. Victory doesn't erase scars. The years of being overlooked, mocked, made small. They lived inside me still, quiet as shadows. My father appeared at my side, a hand resting briefly on my shoulder. His presence silenced the noise around us. "I should have spoken sooner," he said, low enough that only I could hear. "But you needed to find your own voice. Tonight, you did." I looked at him, searching for the disappointment I had always imagined in his silence. For the first time, it wasn't there. What I saw instead was pride. Pure, unguarded, undeniable. The ballroom resumed around us, laughter swelling, glasses clinking. But in that bubble of quiet, I finally understood silence is not always neglect. Sometimes it's space waiting for strength to take root. Weeks passed. Linda signed the divorce papers, stripped of her glittering shields. Melissa sold her jewelry, her car, her illusions of invincibility, just to scrape together restitution. The empire they built on arrogance collapsed faster than anyone thought possible. Meanwhile, Miller Industries thrived. With control of the finances, I implemented the restructuring plans Linda had dismissed, saving millions. Clients who had wavered returned, citing one reason: trust. My apartment, once temporary, gave way to a home I bought in my own name, with money earned honestly. I walked through its empty rooms the first night and felt something I hadn't in years: peace. On my desk in the new CFO suite sits a photograph from that birthday night. Not the party, not the chaos. Just me and my father, after everyone had left, both of us smiling like survivors. Melissa reached out months later. Not for money, but for forgiveness. She sat across from me at a cafe, mascara gone, voice quieter than I'd ever heard. "I thought strength was taking," she admitted. "Turns out it's building." I didn't welcome her back. But I didn't shut the door either. Redemption is a slow process. As for Linda, her pride wouldn't bend. The last I heard, she'd remarried, clinging to a new source of wealth. Some patterns don't break. Sometimes I think back to the melted card in my kitchen trash, the acrid smoke of betrayal on my birthday morning. That was the day I stopped being silent. The day I understood that kindness, without boundaries, becomes a weapon for others.